I messed this up. All righty. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started. So, I think I've met almost everybody, but for those of you who haven't, my name is Teo Paselt. I'm one of the steering committee members for BNHCA, along with from the current group of people, Alden and Jeff. And welcome to this. I think we're going to jump right into it. I really appreciate we've got Justin Horner and Uttara here, Uttara Ram here from the city, who are doing heroic service, reaching out to many groups and sharing kind of the plans in the news and doing the outreach. So I believe the plan is that y'all give sort of a standard presentation, and then we'll take Q&A at the end. So with that said, I will just hand over to y'all. And if you'd like us to spotlight one of you, just let us know if somebody's presenting or something like that.
Oh, great. Hi, I'm Justin Horner. I'm principal planner with the Land Use Planning Division. I am assisting Uttara in the corridors zoning effort, of which she is the project manager. I think I'll just let her take it over. She'll give an introduction as to where this project is coming from and our thoughts about it. We're still in the initial, we're presenting the idea and getting people's feelings about it. We don't yet have, concrete recommendations that we're going to be presenting to people. We're gathering input that will help us develop our alternatives, and then those will be what people see through the fall when we're having our community outreach and public hearings then. But Uttara will talk all about that, so I'll just let her go.
Great. So you're all seeing the screen, right?
Yes.
Everything's good? All right. Great to meet you all. My name is Uttara Ramakrishnan. I'm an associate planner with the city's Land Use Planning Division, also the project manager for the Corridors Zoning Update Project. And all right, so we're mainly here today to talk about the Corridors Zoning Update Project and to gather your feedback on the work done so far. So with that in mind, we'll share an overview of the project, updates from the existing conditions report, and then get into next steps. And we'll then end with a feedback and a Q&A session. And we really want to listen to you and gather as many feedbacks as possible. So the corridor zoning update was initiated by City Council to fulfill commitments from Berkeley's 2023-2031 housing element. You can see a picture of that over here. And so the housing element identifies how Berkeley will meet state housing goals by planning for more housing sites and programs. This project supports Program 27, which comes from the housing element here, which focuses on creating more housing along commercial transit corridors, especially in high resource, higher income neighborhoods. Now, the project focuses on updating zoning rules on Solano, North Shattuck, and College Avenues to allow for more housing. Now, what exactly is zoning? So zoning determines what can be built on a property, including the size, type of buildings, and what uses are allowed. So to put this in context, the city has completed several area plans over the past 15 years, like the downtown area plan, the Southside plan, and then more recently, we've had planning efforts along major corridors that are comparable, such as the Adeline Corridor Specific Plan and the ongoing San Pablo Avenue Specific Plan. The city has also adopted zoning changes to promote middle housing in its low-density residential neighborhoods. And so all these projects reflect how rezoning along key corridors can support the housing goals, which are outlined in Berkeley's latest housing element update. Now, the three corridors, North Shattuck, Solano, and College Ave, currently allow lower building heights compared to other commercial areas in Berkeley. So for example, in Solano, it's around 2 stories, North Shattuck, 3 to 4 stories, College Avenue, again, 2 to 3 stories. Whereas in contrast, corridors like University, Telegraph, Downtown, Adeline, and San Pablo allow for more height. and therefore more density. So upzoning Solano, North Shattuck, and College would promote greater housing equity and access. Now, jumping into the project goals. So the 4 key goals of the project are to expand housing capacity by creating more opportunities for new housing development, fostering equity and inclusion by enabling housing in high resource areas that have historically seen less residential growth, support local businesses by increasing the number of nearby residents and streamlining permitting to make commercial areas more vibrant, and also to promote sustainability by focusing housing in areas with access to transit and amenities, helping reduce car dependency. So I had previously noted that the project is part of Program 27 of the Housing Element, which directs the city to expand housing opportunities, especially in high resource, higher income neighborhoods. Now, what exactly is a high resource neighborhood, and why are these 3 areas considered high resource? So high resource neighborhoods are areas with strong access to the kinds of amenities and opportunities that support health, well-being, economic mobility. These include good schools, safe streets, public parks, access to healthy food, reliable transit, job centers, and essential public services. Solano, North Shattuck, and College Avenues are considered high resource because they offer many of these advantages, making them ideal places to expand housing opportunities in an equitable and sustainable way. Now, the state defines high resource areas as neighborhoods linked to better economic, health, education outcomes, especially for low-income families. And as you can see on the map here, all the 3 corridors fall in high or the highest resource areas, making them key locations for equitable housing growth. Now, Berkeley has seen the highest concentration of recent and planned multifamily housing developments in areas like downtown Southside and along corridors like San Pablo Avenue, University, Telegraph Avenue, but little to no high-density development along Solano, North Shattuck, and College, as you can very clearly see on the slide here. So we'll now get into our existing conditions report, excerpts from that. So the first avenue we'll be looking at is College Avenue. And taking a quick moment to look at the study area for College Avenue, we're mainly focusing on the Elmwood section, specifically the stretch between Russell Street and Webster Street. And we're also including the intersection of College and Alcatraz near the Oakland border. And it's important to note that this project does not include the residential zones along College Avenue. And those areas are part of a separate effort that I mentioned before, which is the city's middle housing project, which is currently exploring zoning changes in residential neighborhoods. And here we're just looking at a typical street section here. College Avenue is a narrow street, only 60 feet wide, with 1 travel lane in each direction and has parallel parking on both sides. Now, most of the buildings along the corridor are 1 to 2 stories tall. And as you can see in the street section here, the pink box shows the existing zoning envelope for non-residential uses. And the red dotted line indicates the zoning envelope for residential uses, which goes to a maximum height of about 35 feet. Solano Avenue. So the study area here includes the portion of Solano within the city of Berkeley, from Nielsen Street to the Alameda. There are approximately 138 businesses located along this corridor, and the area is surrounded mostly by single-family homes. Again, looking at the street section here, pretty wide street, 85 feet, with 1 lane in each direction, but it has angled parking. We do think that the sidewalks are adequate for pedestrian path of travel, also has some trees, but you mostly have 1-story buildings with a few two-story buildings here. And now to North Shattuck. The study area here includes the portion of Shattuck Avenue from Hearst to Rose Street, and a couple of call outs to a couple of these popular businesses. So out of the lot, Shattuck has the widest street, 95 feet, with 2 lanes in each direction, parallel parking and a median. The height of buildings range quite a bit along Shattuck, with a mix of 1 to 2 story commercial buildings and also taller residential buildings ranging from 4 to 5 stories. The street has decently wide sidewalks at 12 feet in width and deep parcels, so they're generally like 120 feet deep. All in all, looking at the 3 corridors, the design team is potentially looking at increasing the height limits within the ranges of 3 to 7 stories. Again, depending on the corridor, the team is working on site-specific solutions, definitely not a one-size-fits-all approach. So to sum up, the Berkeley Corridor's zoning update will encourage landowners or developers to build mixed use and or residential development along the corridors. How will it do this? It'll do this by changing zoning to increase allowable building heights and density along the 3 corridors. Establish clear development standards to ensure that the appearance of potential new higher density development matches the community's visions and priorities for the 3 corridors. What the project will not do includes it will not approve or build new mixed use or residential development along the corridors. It's not going to force redevelopment of private property. It will not create new parks or public open space, since this is a zoning update. It will not redesign streets, sidewalks, or the public right-of-way along the 3 corridors. Now, I shared enough about where we're at, what we're thinking about doing related to the project. Here's a quick snippet of community organizations that we have reached out to so far. And we also have a few more coming up. And so far we've reached out to around 30 community organizations, informing them about the project. We've also shared flyers with businesses in all the 3 corridors. And yeah, we're chatting with you all today. We conducted our first community workshop on May 1st. And these are some of the key takeaways that we heard in the first workshop. Some of these include supporting local character of these corridors. A lot of folks mentioned the need to provide housing variety, affordability. There are a lot of concerns related to mobility, parking, and general, people also urge us to push for thoughtful development, essentially development that fits with the existing urban fabric, and also to sort of talk to our neighbors in Albany and so on. So jumping into next steps, over the past few months, we completed the existing conditions report, and I shared some of those key findings from that today. The full report is available on the project webpage. Next, the design consultant team would present zoning alternatives to the community in August at our second community meeting. I'll share a few more details about that on the next slide. From there, Planning Commission, City Council will review the options and select a preferred alternative this fall. And the goal is to adopt the updated zoning by summer of 2026. So these are the upcoming workshops. August 20th, next week, we have workshops specifically dedicated to North Shattuck at the North Berkeley Senior Center. August 26th, College Avenue at St. John's. And August 27th, we'll meet at Thousand Oaks Elementary to talk about Solano Avenue. So that sort of wraps up the presentation. You can scan this QR code to follow the project on Instagram, stay up to date with all of our latest news and events. Just going to pause here for a bit. And you can also sign up here to receive emails, project updates. So we'll now open to the presentation for your feedback and any questions you may have. And I'm just sharing a few points to consider as you share your feedback. I'll leave this on the screen here for a bit. And yeah, I'm going to stop talking and I would love to hear from you all.
I'll open the floor to anybody that has a question to start with.
I'll start if nobody else has any.
Go for it, Jeff.
I would like to know about kind of the scoping of the study areas and if there's any possibility to expanding them so that they're not just one parcel deep, and how you think about the interaction of whatever zoning that you want to result from this or that eventually does, and the rules about abutting residential zones.
So this is actually something we have been exploring initially when we kind of started the project and trying to look at a larger project area. And Justin, did you want to add some more points to that? You want to take this answer?
Sure, yeah. I mean, sounds right in my face. We had from the very beginning, the idea was to focus on the commercial zoning, and part of that we can look at, the regulations that we currently have for commercial uses that abut residential zones. We didn't look so much at the residential zones for upzoning purposes because most of the adjoining residential zones have been upzoned as part of middle housing. So, that's why even the area between, the area on College Avenue, which is in the project area, but a lot of it is R2 and R2A, all of that has just recently been upzoned. So that's why we've been focusing on the
Sure.
corridors. But the regulations that you talk about, the adjacency to residential zones, that's within the commercial zoning portion of it. So that is stuff that we can take a look at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you do consider that to be already in the scope of the study?
Yeah, certainly.
Warren.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the planners for this overview. I was a little surprised, I confess, by the limited scope that the list of things that are excluded from this this ongoing process. To go through all this and end up with nothing more than increasing the height limits and maybe tweaking the rules on types of stores or something like that seems like a lot of labor. I wish I had a better metaphor. A lot of labor to produce a mouse. I live a block from Solano, and one of the ongoing conversations I have with people all over town is how dead is maybe too strong a word, but compared to, say, College, Rockridge in Oakland, how limited the vibrancy is of these Berkeley areas. North Shattuck is maybe not quite so bad, particularly during business hours because of anchors like Saul's and Cheese Board and so on. Where I live, the Berkeley stretch of Solano seems to have been totally overtaken by the Albany stretch in the last few years. And I'm sure some people saw the article in the Chronicle about that. And, Elmwood is nice, but it's again very quiet compared to, say, Rockridge just down the street. So uh, I guess all I'm saying about all this is that I wish the process had a slightly larger scope than this limited uh, description.
Just to follow up, are there specific things you had in mind that you wish were considered?
Well, I'm not an urban planner. When I talk about this with my friends around town, they're sort of like a I think people kind of throw up their hands and sort of in terms of not really understanding what the constraints are that have made these neighborhoods feel so limited. But it's clear that something can be done because, as I said, I live just uphill from the Albany stretch of Solano, which has really transformed itself since the pandemic, literally over the space of 5 years, to the point where it now gets written up in our regional paper as a foodie destination. And they talked about the specific uh, modest steps that the Albany City Council took to make that happen. So again, this is clearly a larger discussion than just raising height limits. But to engage in this process and not recognize that there's more going on than just whether Solano can have the commercial strip can have buildings as tall as the houses behind seems sort of woefully limited.
Sarah's got her hand up. Go ahead, Sarah, and welcome, Anthony.
Thanks, Teo. Yeah, I also want to reiterate that point that just focusing on the parcels abutting the corridors, it seems, under ambitious. But also, I want to point out, I live in a building directly on San Pablo, and the people who face San Pablo have a pretty different experience from the people who face the other way. And, the people whose windows are directly on the street, they complain about particulate matter and greater noise. And so if we're going to increase the zoning capacity of these corridors, we really should upzone the places where people will want to live, because we're basically making decisions about where people will live based on where we let them build buildings. And so if we're deciding that all of the new people have to live on parcels that face onto the busy streets, like we're making that decision for these people, but we should make a decision in their interests.
Heard, noted. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, please put the housing in places where you would want to live, because somebody's going to be living there.
I think I have a couple thoughts. I mean, part of it is a reaction to the feedback from the overall forum. I mean, I think Berkeley focuses way too much on preserving the physical character of areas as opposed to the socioeconomic and use here, character of the area, right? Among other things, one of the most active things I get these days is Berkeley Sides updates the list of restaurants that have closed, right? I mean, anybody that thinks that like their favorite business is going to stay static is just not. I mean, if we radically transform the economic character of an area so that they can't afford to hire food service workers, well, you're going to have your favorite restaurant close, right? Because that's a condition we created, right? So I just don't. I think unfortunately that's an aspect of this that things will not stay static, no matter what you desire. I would say like on more specifics, I think, and I live close to North Shattuck. I'm in North Side, kind of North Euclid. But I grew up around here, spent a lot of time in all the areas. So just a couple of kind of area specific comments. I mean, I understand that the city has to pick a scope of things, and there's multiple different studies, but very specifically for these commercial corridors, I do think on the wider streets, I think there's a way to sort of really intentionally and thoughtfully design for outdoor dining experiences that it's better than just the cities can rent a series of parking meters and put up a very, either all the way from very shaky to nicely shaky, outdoor dining experience, right? I mean, like we should be planning for things like, the structures that have been built by Cheese Board and Saul's and stuff like that, right? And I think that would be a far better experience than, just a series of those things along the street, right, in certain areas. But I realize that it involves a whole transportation plan and everything like that, which maybe would push everything back. But maybe the recommendation of council would be like, how do you build onto this with, the next step of it? I also think, I understand y'all's point about excluding the residential stretch of college because it was recently part of the missing middle and it's already R2, and I don't know the rules, but to me, like one of the reasons why, Rockridge is lively and, the part of college is struggling is that there's a limited set of space there, and having more commercial space, more space for restaurants, more opportunities for businesses to build, ground floor restaurants and retail and stuff like that would be helpful if it could be addressed, right? So those are kind of area specific, thoughts I have.
You mean the idea, you're talking about college, the idea of maybe like expanding the commercial zoning into currently residentially zoned areas, or expanding allowable non-residential uses in those areas?
Yeah, exactly. And again, I'm not a planner, I don't know, but I mean, I have equivalent thoughts in other parts of the city. Wouldn't it be great if there was a corner store at Euclid and Marin, right? That would make life a lot better for Hills residents. But those factors. But I would just say, like, I don't know if you need to go all the way to commercial zoning or just, like you say, allow alternate uses and variances and things like that for developers to build in that space. So. What other questions or feedback do people have?
Well, I would, I mean, I'm glad to see the height limits raised, but I think even that, when you have this phrase, character of the neighborhood, I think it's a really good point to say, character of the neighborhood, we think, as people have said before, that they think it's sort of what it looks like, not what it feels like. And I think saying, maybe having 10 stories will give the character of a neighborhood that it used to be when we had 2 stories, and that there'll be people on the street. And the idea of having viable dining spaces and reasonable retail places, I think that's important. And you have to have a population that will support that. This is just.
And I'll just jump in because it's a small group. I mean, is there a need to have a consistent zoning height around? I mean, like, again, think about North Shattuck, right? I mean, in my mind, one of the great missed opportunities in Berkeley is that the Safeway was rebuilt to be a single story, building, right? I mean, is there the opportunity to zone for greater heights for larger lots, right? I mean, like, the Andronicos lot, the old Bank of America lot are places that I think could naturally fit something much taller than 3 or 4 stories, right? Versus, the kind of the smaller lot sizes and stuff like that along the length, right? So is there an opportunity to have some reflection of that in the plans? You're on mute, Justin.
Yeah, sorry. We typically don't zone on a parcel by parcel basis. Although it would be curious to know, if you would just say a lot that is greater than a certain square footage, and there's only one such lot right, in the entire district, it's the Andronicos lot or something like that. We would tend to, we would need to create an objective standard. I mean, what we're generally finding, and this is like, I think Solano is a really good example of this. Elmwood is too, is just like the actual parcel and parcel ownership. They're extremely narrow, they're connected, and like there are very few opportunities to have these larger parcels or consolidated parcels that will lead to redevelopment. I mean, we're really like the initial evaluations we're doing, it's just like there's not really much redevelopment potential in these places because of the parcel sizes, the existing uses. You know, when we have areas that are like successfully commercial, where the owners have been getting reliable rents and they'll continue to get reliable rents. You know, the idea is hopefully if we can expand the development capacity, that may make them look at something else to do with their property. But in other cases, they may not be able to, or they just own the little sliver and the other two have different owners and those owners live in Grass Valley or whatever, and they don't communicate. Like, it's just very complicated. And so there really are only a few places where we think it's likely that there's going to be, you know, any interest in redevelopment, you know, corner parcels, particularly because people are really looking for, you know, I'll just say it, access for on-site parking from one of the side streets if they're interested in developing. We would love for those large supermarket, you know, sites to redevelop because they have the size, but, you know, it's unlikely they're going to happen. Then there's, you know, any existing residential development is probably not going to be redeveloped. You know, we don't want to encourage the conversion of rent-controlled housing, for example. And on North Shattuck, there's a lot of new housing that's likely not going to just like redevelop after about 7 years. So it's, you know, there are, you know, as you know, there's just constraints that are over and above just the land use regulations that make it, you know, I mean, it's a little disappointing sometimes to look at, you know, what our analysis has showed us, and we're really hoping there's a little bit more there. So.
See, Anthony's got his hand up. Go ahead.
Hey there, everyone. My name's Anthony. I am a Southside resident who unfortunately missed the staff presentation, so I will keep my comments very brief, and then I'll be quiet while I go on BART. Just some, you know, I understand that staff is working under the housing element passed by, you know, the city council, and so there's limitations on what's in the scope of this effort. But I do want to echo Sarah's comments about, you know, Second Street upzoning. I've been in the West End of Vancouver, where you've got a nice commercial street with nice shops on it, and then right behind that, there's new and old apartment towers. And I think a lot of the heartache about these three areas is that they have beloved, you know, restaurants and shops, et cetera, that people don't want to see redeveloped into a modern commercial space. One way to do that is to let homeowners in the next street who are just as close to transit build on their property. Apart from that, you know, I live closest to the College Avenue part of this corridor. It strikes me as surprising how small the areas we're talking about are. I appreciate that we don't spot zone individual lots, but we're really talking about a small area here. As a Southside resident, I've seen some lot consolidation happen where we've got these really old, you know, mini dorm houses that have been proposed and, you know, maybe one day will be actually turned into, you know, 12-story developments. And I really think that we need to make sure that the capacity we're putting in this plan honors our housing element and the probability of development. I think we need to provide for, you know, buildings that are just under the 75-foot high-rise, highest occupied floor limit. We need to make sure that 8-story buildings are possible as more technology that can do that without a bunch of concrete becomes available. And we need to make sure that if we don't think development is likely, well, then let's increase the zoning until we have an expected outcome which matches what we expected in the housing element. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for your time. Meeting with us is much appreciated. See you later.
Maybe, I don't know, Tom, Matthew, Andrew, Molly, any of y'all, and get Beth, any of y'all have any thoughts, questions, reactions? I guess Mark as well. Mark knows nothing about this topic.
Well, I think my concerns have already been expressed, you know, especially when we're looking at, you know, the challenges to retail. I mean, we see so many vacant spaces that are finding difficult to find tenants, and so many places that, you know, our record stores are gone, our bookstores are gone, our restaurants have continual challenges. I'm wondering, and then what, there's a possibility of losing large employers like Alta Bates Hospital. It's a real challenge, and but I was thinking, it would be good to see what we can do to make these places more pedestrian oriented. I know a lot has been done on uh, the North Shattuck corridor, especially. You've got a farmers market happening right now, and then they have regular street celebrations and street fairs. So you know things that would get people in these places walking. More foot traffic.
Thanks.
So to clarify, were you trying to say like having more retail sort of helps that helps with foot traffic and getting more people around? Is that the point you're trying to make, Tom?
Well, I think yeah, it would be nice, but as I said,
Yeah.
retail has challenged itself. I mean,
Yeah.
we're building all these retail spaces and we're having trouble filling them.
Yeah. No, that is something our design team has also been kind of wrestling with, this question of what do we do with retail. So at our meeting, we will be having a couple of alternatives, which also look at different amounts of retails in the corridors as well. Yeah, but it's definitely something which is on our minds, and we're talking about it too. Yeah.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Matthew.
Might add just a small thing. I'm on the the north or the top of Solano, and I take a particular interest with that area. It's a little different than the other two mentioned. Um, there's kind of two comments I have. One is the relationship of building height to street width. So there's a long standard that the wider the street, the taller the buildings along the street want to be and can be to create a city room that stretches from building face to building face. So as you move down College, it's almost always just a two-lane street as you're going down. Maybe when you get down to Rock Ridge and where Market Hall is, it gets kind of bigger there. But and then Shattuck goes back and forth. But Solano is a really wide two-lane street, unnecessarily wide, actually. That whole area, I mean, it's a different study entirely, but the whole area around Hopkins and Monterey, the streets are extremely wide there. You could probably get rid of some street and get free lots out of that. But my point is that the relationship between the street width and the building height is really important to make an urban gesture work. That's one point. The second point is that I think, I mean, I didn't look at your studies and everything, but there was a theater at the top of Solano that was proposed to be changed to a rock climbing gym, and that was a nightmare, just a nightmare. And I think I come from kind of the middle ground, which is I'm an architect, but I'm also a developer, and there's something that happens within the city of Berkeley that makes any developer think twice about doing anything in this town. And it has nothing to do with rules and regulations. It has a lot to do with staff's ability to process an application, the city's ability to work with the citizens to keep the process moving along. I understand public participation very well, but it goes little so far that it hinders any progress. I mean, you need public participation, but when it stymies and kills projects, is it done the right thing? And that's a larger philosophical question for the city of Berkeley as it gets to that point where we're at that tipping point where maybe some of the old school guard that was anti-development for years and years has seen the benefits of development, which is density and making stores work and making places lively and all those good things that's really needed. It seems the city of Berkeley, at least from the staff level and potentially from the council level, doesn't promote that. They're not there. The gentleman who just left on BART mentioned another city, other cities that I've studied, those entities, either staff or council or the mayor, comes from a philosophy of yes or a position of yes. My experience with the city of Berkeley is if I ask for anything, the first answer is no, without consideration of what the question is. It's just plain no, you can't do that. And then I would push back and say, well, here's the rules that allow me to do that. And then they usually say maybe, and then they'll say no again until I push a third time. And then maybe it'll happen, but it'll happen really slowly and it'll be painful and costly. And until that process in reality changes, all of the plans for density corridors are nothing more than plans. I'll leave it at that.
Oh, go ahead, Warren. Is
I
that you
can't
raising your
figure out
hand?
I can't figure out how to do a hand raise on Zoom on Windows, so
Okay.
I have to actually do it
Oh.
for real. I don't know if there was going to be an answer from city staff to what Matthew was just saying, but I sort of have a related question. I'm wondering whether staff has any thoughts about what has led to the challenges in creating that urban look and feel on these stretches of the city. I think North Shattuck is probably, in some respects, in the best shape that way. I feel like Solano and Elmwood are much deader. The bit of Elmwood right around Ashby seems to do okay. But as soon as you get more than a few storefronts away, it gets very quiet again. And I'm just wondering what sort of thoughts the staff experts have about that.
I mean, I would say, I guess our theory is that by promoting more residential development and allowing people to live in these areas, we will be able to have more street activity, have more customers. As many of you know, the city council just adopted our middle housing zoning changes, which rezoned a significant percentage of the city with by right residential development, I should add. So, it's really, I think I agree with folks who were saying, why are we just looking at these corridors? But I think, as Uttara had mentioned in her presentation, over the past 10 years, there's been a significant movement towards trying to upzone and sort of, streamline the permit process. And that's been through the middle housing zoning changes. That's been through the south side upzoning that we did in 2023. That's what we're looking at here at corridors. That's what we're looking at San Pablo specific plan. In downtown development, in the downtown, it's taken a long time, but we have really big buildings that are happening there. But I should note, and this is something I'm curious if people have an opinion about. I mean, if anyone's been on Center Street, from Shattuck to the campus, we've approved a large development there, but then the delay in the development has had all of these vacant storefronts. And so when we're talking to people about development in the corridors, particularly the merchants, one thing that they keep saying to us is how is this gonna, how is construction, not just the potential to have where I'm renting my business redeveloped and be kicked out of it, but how would construction and development of neighboring parcels affect my ability to do business? And I think there's a lot of concern there. These people are working really hard. Small business, I'm just not that type of person that can deal with that level of uncertainty every day. And so I definitely understand where they're coming from. And I don't exactly have the best answer to them, because if you look downtown, you do have stalled projects, you do have disruption of business. And so that is also something that we're trying to balance at the same time that we're trying to look at, ways that we may be able to redevelop these areas. Like, what do we do in the meantime? So it's a tricky.
Sarah, your next raised hand.
Thanks. I just want to give some quick feedback. I've heard a couple of times the point mentioned that we just upzoned neighboring streets via missing middle. And I want to point out that missing middle is actually a really conservative policy. It's, I mean, even in the discussions, at city council, there were expectations that like, a couple dozen projects would happen over the course of 4 years. And so, in my opinion, um, missing middle doesn't really check the box of upzoning neighboring streets. That it's really a very just small policy. And for these commercial corridors with bus routes along them that are super walkable, we can do more.
We've got webinar attendee who's raised their hand. Oh, hey,
Would that be?
it probably is Rude, Brandon.
Oh, okay, cool.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I have a few ideas. My name is Brandon. Hi, everyone. I'm a member of ZAB, but I'm joining today in my personal capacity. I'm a District 2 constituent. Some ideas. One of the things that could help reduce barriers to commercial activity after these buildings are built is maybe we can incorporate a ministerial ABV permit for restaurants that want to open up soon after these buildings are completed. My understanding for why a lot of new construction, the ground floor is empty, is, developers include it because it's mandated, but then the upfront cost of actually, putting in HVAC, turning the cold shell into a rentable commercial space. There's a lot of high fixed costs, and it's just something that a lot of the building managers are not interested in. So, to the extent that we can incentivize, these buildings to take on those costs, that would be great. Second thought, not having side or front setbacks makes a lot of sense. These corridors already have a lot of historic fabric, single, two-story commercial that abut the street. So I think that would really help out here. Let's see. I'm a big fan of interior density. There's a great new project on Milvia that's a residential care facility that interfaces excellently with the neighborhood. And it's because it's not on a large, busy arterial. In terms of density maximums, I know that the city does a lot of FAR based density limits, and there's no actual density cap. But one thing I've observed is that density DUA maximums actually help the city and developers calculate the maximum allowable density for the purpose of the density bonus. So maybe something to consider here. And then finally, I think I am of the opinion that smaller lot development leads to a better urban fabric. It's more fine grained. So, to the extent that, we can incentivize existing parcels being redeveloped instead of, 4 or 5, parcels getting combined and then redeveloped, I think that would just make for, a nice zoning standard. So anyway, thank you so much.
That was excellent comments, Brendan. Thank you. I did want to add just a little bit to what others have said. I really only have kind of like that detailed knowledge about the North Shattuck area where I live. But I would encourage this project to make sure that there is a goal that it's trying to achieve that won't be totally obsoleted by other things. If we're going to do a lot of work on North Shattuck, if we're going to pay attention to it. Because if you think about the kind of projects that are already in the pipeline, for example, at the old Virginia Cleaner site, the old Poulet site, there's I believe a 7-story project that's in the advanced planning stages, and it's catty corner from a differently zoned parcel that also has a 7-story building on it. So there's kind of like the ground truth of that. In addition, there's a foreseeable outcome. Who knows if it'll actually happen, but it's foreseeable that the entire area will be under the influence of SB 79, which are proposed within half a mile of a BART station to pretty dramatically raise height and density limits and basically erase all the other bulk and whatnot limits. So I guess I would encourage the plan to kind of swing for the fences on North Shattuck, considering its obvious centrality and its proximity to the university and so on and so forth. That's all I wanted to add.
Yeah, just with that, it looks like, if we're doing the half mile from a BART station, so it'll go like to Shattuck up to Virginia about, would be the SB 79 circle. I think when I plotted it on a map, or is that?
I've got it up to Cedar, but it really depends on the interpretation. But yes, it's
Yeah,
sort
I guess
of
would you do the center of the station or like the northernmost stairway? I don't know.
right. It may just nick kind of like the southernmost parcels of the CNS.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts, questions?
Oh, I had one more if anyone didn't. Just one thing I
Go for it,
forgot.
Brandon. Yeah.
One of the, I think the South Side specific plan was updated to include this, or there was a past referral to do this. I forget, but one of the past referrals at least was to allow the ground floor to have an interior of residential, and then the portion abutting the street to be commercial, so that you can have smaller commercial spaces, which it seems like we're learning are smaller commercial spaces command lower rents, which make it so they're easier to fill up rather than large, really huge spaces.
I will say, and by the way, we were down in San Diego recently, and my husband loved that there's a lot of second floor restaurants in at least a Little Italy part of San Diego that seem to be really popular, right? So I think that maybe is something to look at as well as, what are the uses beyond the first floor for retail, basically. Because it allows, among other things, it allowed sort of outdoor dining and stuff like that while being a little bit private. So cool. Alrighty. Well, I at least have to run, so I will thank Uttara and Justin for joining. Just a reminder that we did record this. I hope everybody understood that when especially people that joined late, and everybody was good with their comments, but we will be posting it on YouTube. I guess, Uttara and Justin, any final thoughts from your side before we call it an end?
Justin, you wanna?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you very much for inviting us and giving us your comments. We would encourage you to attend the community meetings that are coming up later in the month that Uttara shared with us and with you all, and are in on the website and available. I just say that like this tenor of comment is not the typical tenor of comment that we're getting when we're going out there. So you may, if you're interested in sharing it, in the context of the greater community, we certainly would be welcome to hear from you in those contexts as well. So hopefully, if you can find some time to do that, that would be awesome.
And just adding to Justin's point, we also have a project after our 3 community meetings. We will have a public survey. So we would love to collect all of your feedback over there as well, and please spread the word. But also, it'd be great if you could share the recording with us for our notes, and I want to make notes of all the comments as well. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you all, and that's why we exists as an organization of Berkeley Neighbors, is to make sure that Berkeley people are speaking about this topic. So, all right. Well, thank you so much. And thank you definitely for reaching out to us. Definitely appreciate being included in y'all making the time after hours. And thanks to everybody from the group that joined. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks. Good evening,
Take
everybody.
care.
Bye-bye.